things happened to Dan, let's say. So what made you both want to kind of get the gang back together? How did this come about?
It started with Sarah.
Yeah, I guess John Goodman was on the Talk, Sarah's talk show, and they did a little scene together on the couch, on the Rosanne couch. And then they kind of turned to each other and they said, "This feels really right." And Sarah, I guess, said, "Do you want to do this?" And John said, "Yeah, let's do it." And then it just happened very quickly after that.
Like within 3 weeks, we were already up and running. It was crazy.
No kidding. And this is part of a wave, I guess, of shows being remade. This one feels different to me.
It's better.
Yeah!
Obviously, it came out of the fact that it's a very naturalistic and realistic show about a struggling working class family, and that's at the core of a lot of what's going on today. So it just felt like this family should be part of that discourse. And obviously, the members of the family see things very differently. Rosanne sees it one way, Jackie sees it another way, Darlene sees it another way, Becky another. So that we really have a real dynamic conversation going on, not unlike what's going on in a lot of people's families, or conversations that aren't being had because people are afraid to open up those doors and start fighting, and maybe those are conversations that should be had. And so this way you kind of see the chance to laugh at yourself a little bit in your own.
I think a lot of shows also are kind of come from a place of being topical, and our show comes from a place of the family. And so, you know, when you watch the first episode, you'll kind of see more of a topical feel, but our show is really driven by relationship. It's driven by what happens inside the home. And I think that what's really amazing about this revival is that all of those relationships that we have, the Connor family has had, it's just strengthened with time, and it's more dynamic and it's deeper. And I think that's, to me, is the primary difference, is that the politics come from the inner relation of the family rather than something outside.
Yeah, I should say, and we'll definitely leave room for you people to ask some questions as well. The first episode goes pretty directly into the current political state in the country. It's no secret that Rosanne is a public Trump supporter, and you guys make use of that. Were you worried that would be too polarizing potentially right out of the gate?
No, it's exactly what we wanted to deal with. I mean, when that came up, everybody's like, "Oh, I don't know what's gonna." The conversations we all had about that, exactly what came up in the show. And the truth is, for a struggling white working class family, they probably would have gone toward anybody who was promising jobs. And that and so it really, Rosanne was like, we really feel these people go that direction, not all of them. And then what happens is we start the first episode with Jackie and you'll see, with Jackie and Rosanne not having spoken in almost 2 years since the election. And then they have to kind of deal with that for the first time when Darlene comes home. So the idea was to get into the meat of it naturally.
There was like a really charming article I read in the Trib about the show having been based in Elgin, and the fact that, you know, they wanted to say that, well, in Elgin, everybody voted for Hillary primarily. And, you know, I thought that was great, just being from, you know, the Chicago area. But, you know, it is a show that takes artistic liberties. This isn't a docudrama. It's fiction, and it's meant to reflect things going on in the country with some artistic liberty. So it's not dogma, and we know that, you know, there were a lot of white women that voted for Trump in the United States, unfortunately. But, you know, Rosanne she's a populist. She is someone who is an advocate for the working class and for, you know, the people who feel disenfranchised in our country. And for her, it's very, very important to have that voice representative, whether we like it or not. And I feel like, what I hope for people is that they see the character of Rosanne as being part of a greater narrative that is like every other narrative where people grow and change over time. So what I'm trying to say is the character of Rosanne doesn't end up where she starts as a Trump supporter. Not that she's totally different, but she goes through a journey that's important during the course of this season.
And Rosanne, if you know her, she's not a blind follower of anybody. So she's obviously an extremely strong defender of women's rights right from way back when, and for gay rights way back when. And she was a Bernie Sanders supporter, and like many of the Bernie Sanders supporters, she turned right instead of left. But it was like, she also was like really, she's like, yeah, let's go after these conversations. Let's talk about it. Let's get people talking about it. That's really what needs to be done. And so, I say, like we talked about, the show isn't really political. You'll see some of it in the first episode. But really, the show is about the family. And as these things come up, there may be some stuff discussed. But otherwise, it's really about what they go through. And we tackle a lot in the course. You can see we've already started some things that are uncomfortable for a lot of, I don't think other sitcoms would take on a lot of the stuff we're taking on. And this is a show that, because it's so real, and because we're willing to take those moments of uncomfortable silence, which you don't really see as much in sitcoms anymore, dramas always do, but we're willing to sit there and let that moment be so that everyone can let some things sink in.
Yeah, you are, I think throughout the 3 episodes I've seen, you're very much about the kind of class markers and the struggles that people are going through, but in a real way. You're not just throwing, the name Walmart out there or something like that. It's
right. Yeah.
I think that's the power of the show, is that I think a lot of like independent films and a lot of pieces comment on the working class. It's almost ironic, they're trying to think that it's cool or whatever, instead of portraying it with honesty, which I think is, whether it's successful or not, what our show is at least attempting to do.
So, was it fun to get the gang back together again?
Yeah, it was, everybody was afraid to mess with the legacy of the show because it had been something so special for so many people. And so and then the first table read, we all laughed the way everybody here laughed, and we were all like, okay, we're gonna be okay, we're gonna be fine. And then it was just fun. You can't not have fun with John Goodman and Roseanne and Laurie Metcalf and everybody hanging out.
And Lacey Goranson.
And it was just, it really honestly was just, it was like a family reunion where you don't know where it's gonna go or how it's gonna go, but it turns out really good. And so everybody was really sad. And I knew we had done well because John Goodman, who was extremely private, never talks, he actually started talking to me, and I said, okay, he's sad. He's having some separation anxiety because he's actually talking to me.
I felt like it was like the Bulls 6P.
We may be a ways away from the 7th for the Bulls.
Definitely.
Yep.
Are you? So you're hopeful this will continue. We'll be able to keep doing this.
We all agreed to do 8.
Yeah.
And we ended up doing 1 extra. We did 9. And the idea was, if we can do 8 great shows, then that's wonderful, and whatever happens, happens. But at the end of it, everybody was like, I really hope we can do this again. So we do. We hope we get a chance. There's a lot more to be said. It's the counters are, kind of a common denominator for all Americans, no matter what your point of view is, and they talk about things honestly. So that's there's not a lot of that on TV. There hasn't been for a long time.
Yeah, that's
in comedy.
Yeah, something I was going to ask about. I think television comedy in general, particularly network television comedy, has really been in decline in maybe the last decade or so. What do you think accounts for that, and how are you going to single-handedly fix it?
Oh, well, we're going to cure that right away, just all by ourselves.
Spin-offs.
Yeah, we have the good fortune, we're kind of grandfathered in with the nature of the show. We drove the standards and practices people crazy. I mean, they were not happy with us. We had to, and we had the love and support of the ABC execs and our executives, Tom Werner and everybody else and Rosanne herself to go forward and be real brave. So we were able to do and say things that a lot of the shows wouldn't take a chance on. So we have the opportunity at least to open that door. It's tough because with cable, as a broadcaster, you're going into everybody's homes. The original concept is you're going to everybody's homes free. And so you don't want to cause disturbance in someone's life. And then when you go to cable, you're buying it, you're paying for it, so therefore the idea is that you're buying into the trouble if you get it. so I mean, there's shows. I love Shameless. I think Emma, if you recognize Emma Kenny, she plays the daughter, the youngest daughter Debbie on Shameless, and that show is definitely a progenitor of the Rosanne show. Definitely, they feel it too, that there's an ancestral tie there. But for network, we're hoping that this opens some doors for people to start discussing things and just get back to the Norman Lear period was a very wonderful thing that went away with the PC-ness of the 1980s. The 90s kind of caught the same kind of fire. So maybe we're moving away from that direction where everybody can start having a bit of a sense of humor about things and let things go.
I also think that what's really distinguishes our show from other shows is that the humor comes from a real place rather than something that's a punchy joke place, so that you laugh almost as a relief because of a lot of the discomfort that happens in a family, and I just feel like you don't feel like it's put on the humor, it's coming from something organic.
That's the hope.
Yeah. Well, that seemed, I think the reaction here suggested people are feeling that to some degree too. Let's see what folks here want to know about. Do we have a mic out there, or do we just want people to yell?
Oh, we're gonna run a mic to you.
Oh, I can yell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hello. Okay, so first I'm just gonna preface that this was actually my first Roseanne episode ever.
Oh, wow. Welcome.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I can see how each character has their own personality, and I can see how strong those bonds are between each character, and I can imagine how they developed over time. And I'm wondering, what's your advice to writers who are trying to produce new series, new programs, how they can make such strong character development from the beginning or over time? I guess what's your advice on that?
If you're trying to, there's nothing wrong with comedies that are just crazy or funny. I mean, I love Workaholics, which is just crazy. If you want to create something along these lines, you have to constantly ask yourself over and over as you go line by line, would someone really do this? Would someone really say this? Would they really feel this? Because a lot of sitcomery and what gives sitcoms a bad name is the dishonesty of the moment. But you're getting the laughs, and sometimes people want to escape, and that's okay. I never try and gauge everybody against Roseanne. But if you want something that has a kind of a bigger picture to it, and you want to deal with things of substance, it's really about the honesty of the characters, and it's really hard to do. It's the hardest show there is to write. I've written a lot of shows, and this is definitely the most difficult because you can't use that easy box of jokes. You can't. The jokes feel very uncomfortable. There are jokes here, but they're all out of character. Almost none of these these lines, you can't go to your friend and say, hey, did you hear on the other day they said so and so. It wouldn't mean anything unless you saw the context of it. So, and that's the beauty of I think what the show is. It's a pleasure to write. It really is. At this point, I don't really write anything I don't want to write now. And this show, when they asked me to come back and do it again, I did the 5th season of Roseanne. And after that, the opportunity to come back and do this, there's no way I was going to say no.
So you find yourself having to sacrifice what might be funny for the sake of the character.
Absolutely, throwing out, there are lines that we can say in the writing room that make us cry with laughter, and we go, it's just not real. It's just a good laugh for us. It's just a room joke, what we call it.
I think, I'm not a writer, but I think another element of the show is, the writers are with us when we do run-throughs, and we're reading their rewrites. And so it's a very collaborative effort. We feed off of each other, and there really is a trust and support dynamic between the actors and the writers, and I think we really feed off of each other.
It's it's very similar to a workshop when you do it, because it's really much more like a play when you do it in front of an audience. So we're working all week long. We start with a table read break. I'll tell you quickly how it works. You do a table read, you read it. A bunch of stuff doesn't work, a bunch of stuff does work. You get rid of the stuff that doesn't work, you put new stuff in. Second day, a bunch of that new stuff doesn't work, you go back. And in the process is constant refinement with the actors' give and take. And so you it works itself by the end of the week to be something that you finally run out of time, you can't change anymore. so you shoot it. But it really, there is a feel to that. Rosanne, everybody was really very involved. Sarah Gilbert was very involved. Rosanne was involved. We asked all the actors for their input, and they let us know if I would never make an actor say anything they don't want to say. So there's that trust.
Like it or not, we give our input.
Yeah. and it works beautifully. So why wouldn't you want people who are funny to be giving you feedback?
And speaking of the writers, I should mention, if people didn't notice in the credit, the names Wanda Sykes and Norm Macdonald.
Yes.
That's not a bad writer's room.
No, we had a great group. Yeah, Norm was one of the writers my season back in the 5th season. And then Norm and I did a show together called Norm. And Wanda and I did a show together, and when I asked her, I said, would you consider joining us? She was like, oh, hell yeah, I love that show, I'll do it. So we had an incredible writer's room. A lot of people who were veterans of the show from the past, and then new voices as well.
Okay, so I heard Sandra Bernhard is on at some point. You can talk about her being on and just how the LGBT storylines have evolved over time period and the new ones.
Sandra is on the show. She's in one episode. There wasn't enough time to bring back all the people we love to fit everybody in. We only had the 9 episodes, so if we do more, I'm sure she'll come back and join us. I think in terms of, the show was groundbreaking. The first kiss on TV was Mariel Hemingway and Rosanne, 2 women kissing. I think that Roseanne's been in the forefront of all those things. I know that it sometimes seems contrary, because I know that certain political aspects, people will go, well, that person isn't necessarily in line. And Roseanne's quote in one of the interviews was, well, he says a lot of crazy shit. So, but I think that in terms of the show, in terms of her, in terms of what the show, the counters were always open to people who weren't like them, and open to understanding. And there's a process, like you saw in this episode, there's an arc to learning about someone who does something that you don't understand, and then finding out why, and then embracing that person. And so this show's always been great at doing that, and will always do that.
Just really quick, I just want to say, also, this is my first show that I've actually watched, and I'm so excited now that I really want to see all 8 episodes. It was really fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
That's
it.
cool.
Oh, by the way, Johnny Galecki comes back. Just we haven't mentioned that. David and Darlene have been estranged for many years, and David returns.
This isn't the first episode I've watched. I've watched Rosanne since I was a kid, and I grew up on the Southwest Side. My parents are undocumented, and that's the white people that I knew growing up, and that was a very important representation for them. And as a witness to that kind of whiteness, it's really important and refreshing to forcing these conversations that we all have at Thanksgiving, right? We don't have them once a week on television. So thank you so much for doing that. It's really important and awesome. My question is,
do you take, is this for Trump supporters? I'm sorry? Is this show for Trump supporters? No, it's for everybody. I think there'll be people who support Trump who are gonna be really put out by some of the things in the show, and there are people who are more liberal who will be really put out by some of the stuff in the show. The idea was to open the doors to discussion. You'll hear people from every point of view give their opinion. Again, the writing room was the same way. Not in the writing room, not everybody agreed on anything. And so those discussions that we had became the discussions of the show. And again, it's also not going to be as political a show as it might seem, because of the name, of the candidate that she supported. It's become kind of it's a real hot button. It's easy to launch into that. It's really not a show about politics, it's a show about a family. And only those things come up as there are things to deal with, like in every family that have some political bent to them. But no, it's not a show for, it's a show for everybody, and take away from it what you will.
It feels kind of brave to be putting that out there, though.
Yeah, I think that people will be, they'll be like, whoa. But that's what Rosanne always was. It was always like, whoa. So.
It's also, I think right now, hopefully there are adults in this country that recognize that we need to have a dialogue about what this country needs socioeconomically and on a lot of different levels. We need to start talking about things in an adult way and not just saying the Trump supporter because maybe you voted for somebody, but there's a myriad of things that you disagree with that person with. And maybe that's just one element of the human spectrum. And I think we need to start being more nuanced. I really do, because I think that's what people are in this country, is nuanced. We're not just a supporter,
Yeah, so I grew up watching Roseanne. I could probably name several outfits that match Darlene growing up. And it was, there are some episodes that are ingrained in my childhood. I mean, like when Roseanne went to the lesbian bar, that's gonna be, something I will always remember. And definitely, you're the real Becky. And so growing up watching this show and then watching, and one day Becky changes and then, you're back and now, and you were in, great films, Boys Don't Cry, phenomenal performance. But what does it feel like to come back and be Becky, especially with the other Becky there as well? I just have to know,
First of all, she ain't no Becky. I'm kidding. Working with Sarah Chalk was so great. It was so much fun. We kind of were mirroring each other. Obviously we bear a resemblance, but it was kind of fun to see our differences. And I think the way she comes back is just fantastic because it just shows, it felt right for both of us. I was a little worried about her feelings with me being Becky again, but she was so lovely and just happy to be back, just like I was with our old team. So, but I did feel that it was really interesting revisiting the character because I've lived a lot of life, everyone else has lived a lot of life, and I think that the depth of that really informs the new version of the show in such a profound way. And I feel proud of Becky. I mean, she has a job, she's trying to get by, and once you get through the first couple weeks, there's one episode that's very, very gripping and moving. That really is a cathartic episode for Becky and really kind of puts her in a new place.
That's all we're going to tell you about.
One more question. Yes, ma'am. how much, whoa, that's not a reverb. How much of what we'll see out of the 8 episodes, how much of it percentage-wise would you say is everyone sticking to the script versus ad-libbing?
There was virtually no ad lib. I'm trying to think. I'm
Yeah,
sure-
I mean, sometimes in rehearsal, like, I mean, we know these characters so well, and especially John Goodman is just, you know, he's so cute. He just kind of gets in his zone, and he kind of starts riffing a little bit, and the writers recognize that, and they rewrite it
Oh, yeah,
because
if
of
someone
his
says something funny
riffing a
on
little
stage, we'll
bit.
take credit for it. So we'll put it in. But honestly, there's very, very little ad-libbing, but there's a lot of rewriting. So it is, you know, but it's like a play. It's very much like a play, and everyone is very anxious to know their line. All the actors are very anxious to get their lines down, and they keep changing. But we keep changing them out.
We have to be.
But they want to get them down so they can really dig into the work of acting, and so nobody wants to play too much for too long on those things.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate
Thank you so much.
March 27th.
Yeah.